My name is John Peterson, and today I'll be talking about running Autopkg in Concourse CI. So a little bit about who I am. I am currently the Manager of Enterprise Infrastructure Engineering at Gemini, where my team and I help to manage our fleet of macOS machines, amongst many other things. So today, we will be going over what Concourse is, the components that make it up, the architecture, how to deploy a pipeline, why we chose to use it, and then how you can use it to manage Autopkg. So Concourse is an open source continuous thing doer. It is a great tool for running CI/CD pipelines, and it is made up of three basic components: resources, tasks, and jobs. So resources. Resources are the thing you will interact with the most. They can be a Docker container, it could be a GitHub repository, it could be a resource to schedule your jobs. And each resource has three main components: the check, the in, and the out. So the check should return the latest version of the resource. And that's not to say the latest commit or the most recent version. Latest being a fresh pull of that resource. The in phase is run during the get step, and it pulls a specific version representing that object from where you tell Concourse to go get it from. Out is on the end of the pipeline. This generates a new version, usually manipulated by something that happened during your pipeline. So tasks. Tasks are the smallest configurable unit in a Concourse pipeline. A task can be thought of as a function that takes inputs, puts things out, and will either succeed or it will fail. And then jobs. Jobs determine the actions of your pipeline. This is where you tell your pipeline what to do. They determine how the resources progress through your pipeline, and then on the other end, they help to visualize the pipeline in the web interface, which we will get to. The most important attribute of the job is the build plan, where you are instructing the pipeline what is going to happen during this run. This determines the sequence of the pipeline, the order in which you get your resources, the order in which you interact with them, and then the steps to execute any parts of the build in that job. Fly is a tool that allows you to interact with Concourse. Since Concourse doesn't have an admin panel, there's no GUI to interact with it, Fly is the tool that allows you to set the pipelines, to manipulate them. It allows you to log into your workers to check what's going on should something go wrong. But yeah, with Fly, you are able to perform all of the tasks necessary to interact with Concourse. So that's authentication, like I said, getting a shell in the worker, setting the pipelines, modifying them, all of that. In the architecture of Concourse, there are three main components. There is the web UI, where you can see your pipelines in action. There are the worker nodes, which run the jobs for you. So there could be an endless number of these, any flavor of Linux worker you want to attach, Windows machines of interest to us, macOS machines, and then there is the database, a Postgres database. So the workers have no important state configured. They are built up and they are destroyed with each run, with the caveat of macOS machines, which cannot spin up containers like Linux machines. There are advantages to this and drawbacks, which we'll go over later. So with Concourse, you configure as code and then visualize it to verify. So why Concourse? Having worked with different CI systems in the past and not finding any of them particularly enjoyable or intuitive, I was looking for something new. And when I joined the company, Concourse was in use, and I figured I would give it a try. I had been using GitHub runners based off the great work the folks over at Gusto did. and enjoyed it, but was looking for just a little bit more control. And as seen in this image, Concourse can handle incredibly complex pipelines. I have nothing in use that is anywhere near this complex and may never will, but it's comforting to know that as the pipelines scale, it is going to be supported. And while it does not pertain to the functionality whatsoever, the pipeline interface is really nice to look at, and it's a good resource to provide a quick glance of what is going on or what's not going on in your pipelines. Also, with the ability to self-host Concourse, we have access to things that are on an internal network. So if you are using Vault to store your secrets, you have access to that. If you are using Artifactory to store known good images, you have access to that. And that is not something that is unique to Concourse. You can get that with any CI tooling that you can self-host, but the ability to do those is still something that was of value. Now for Autopkg. I'm fairly sure that we're all familiar with the amazing tool that is Autopkg, and I will not be going into depth on what Autopkg is and the functionality of it in this presentation. There are many presentations one could find online to cover this in far greater depth and skill than I probably ever would. But at a high level, Autopkg is an automation framework for Macs to handle the packaging and distribution of apps so that we don't have to manually do it. So putting this all together, like I said, I had used the GitHub runner by the folks over at Gusto to put together, and I really enjoyed that. There was just some small changes I wanted to make. I added hub to the process to open PRs instead of just creating a branch. Some security checks to check the hashes of packages that we were installing, and then just some additional logging and things that I found nice in our environment. So let's break this pipeline down. Here we define our resources. This tells Concourse what we need to bring in to make the pipeline work. So here we can see we're pulling in the Autopkg repo, the Monkey repo, and in a real world setting, these would be two separate repos, but for the sake of this demo, these are what we've got. The Monkey code to run make catalogs, a Python base image, which is just the Python container or a Python Docker container to run the images on. Notify, which helps us to send Slack notifications whether the job should succeed or fail. And then the schedule resource. This tells the pipeline when to run. So you could have this run every hour, you could have this run every other day, weekdays like you see in this pipeline, really up to you on when you want to schedule and run this job. So here we are planning our job. We give it a name, Autopkg, and now we plan it. So Concourse allows you to pull in resources in parallel to speed things up. So at the same time, we're pulling in the Autopkg repo, the Monkey repo. Here we can see we are disabling git LFS, because for this purpose, we don't need to pull the full images of the software that we are going to be checking if it exists in our Monkey repo. We're just looking at the package info files. We're getting the Monkey code, the Python base image, and the schedule. In this line, trigger true, this is what tells Concourse when to run the job. So you could set a trigger on a repository so that if something was pushed to main, that will trigger the job, or if a PR is open. The triggers are highly configurable, but it's what kicks off the job outside of you going in to manually run it. Next, we define the task, which is what's going to happen. So using the Python base image, we set up some configuration. We tell it the platform to run on, Darwin. We pass the parameters, which are set as environmental variables. So we need a Slack webhook token, the GitHub token to open up pull request using hub, and a private key used for authentication with the repo. Next, we define the inputs, so the things that come in to this job. So we need the Autopkg repo, the monkey repo, the monkey code, and the output, what we want to come out the other end of this pipeline. So now we install our dependencies. And I should note that on macOS workers, once your dependencies are installed, they are there. These instances are not ephemeral like the Linux containers. When you install it, it will be there, which is nice because you can, if you need brew, Autopkg, monkey tools, you can install them once and they're there. But this can lead to something if you install a version that has some kind of bug in it or doesn't operate the way you want. You need to remember to go ahead and update those. So I've included a step where you say, is this the first run? Yes. If it is, we install the dependencies. If not, we save ourselves some time and skip that, knowing that they are there. So we can see here, we're installing the pip requirements. Then we are pulling the Autopkg tools, verifying the hash of the package, make sure that nothing happened in transit, installing it, everything looks okay. If not, bailing out so we can see what changed, and doing the same for the monkey tools. Next, we configure our environment. So we write some of the Autopkg preferences so that Autopkg knows where our things are. Then we go to the next step of adding the repo for each repo in the repo list.txt file. So here you would define any of the repos that you use with Autopkg and go ahead and repo add them, then update before we kick everything off to make sure we have the latest version of everything. And now it's time to run it. So with this, I pass the required flags, or the required information as flags. So now that the run is defined, on the other end, we are going to set up an alert for ourselves. So if everything succeeds, get a Slack webhook saying, all is well. If something should fail, we are alerted on the same. And you can include a link to the build ID. So in your alerts channel, you could see this pop up, failure on Concourse build number 20. Click it, and it'll take you right there to see what happened. And now it's go time. Let's see how this looks. But before we do that, we need to use Fly to set the pipeline. So first, we are going to log in to Concourse. You specify the team you are running this on. And to that end, you can set up RBAC with Concourse. So your engineering team has access to a subset of pipelines. Your SREs have access to another, and people could have access to all. However you configure it, you can base it off the team. So for this, we are using it to log in to our team for this demo. So we log in, and then we set the pipeline. So Concourse will show you all the changes that were made when you set a pipeline. On a new pipeline, this is going to be everything, and it'll look somewhat like a git diff to you. Should look somewhat familiar. But if you made changes, say you changed the path of your requirements file and then set the pipeline again, you would just see that one line change indicating that is what's going to happen as this pipeline is set. When it's done, you can use Fly to unpause the pipeline, or you can also do that in the web UI. So here it is showing us the resources that we are pulling in. Should look the same as the pipeline that we set up. Concourse kind of shifts around the syntax a little bit, but same information. Next, it'll show us the resource types. And at the very end of everything, it is going to ask, do you want to apply this configuration? If you select yes, it's going to be set in Concourse and ready for you to run. And here it's showing us that we can use Fly to unpause that pipeline, like I said, or you can just go into the Concourse web UI and click play. So once we log into Concourse, we get this visualization of what the pipeline looks like. It is showing us our in resources on the left. So we see the schedule, the different repositories, the Docker image that we're going to be running it on. Then in the middle, we see what represents the job, Autopkg. And on the other side, what is coming out of this pipeline. In our case, it is a Slack notification. Since the Autopkg wrapper itself is handling pushing code back to the repository, we're not putting the monkey code or the monkey repository as an out resource, which in a typical pipeline might be the case, but the way this job was set up, we don't need to. So we just have Slack on the other end letting us know which way this pipeline went. So next steps. From experience, Autopkg works great in Concourse CI, but that is not the only piece to the puzzle. So once we have the updates in our monkey repo, there has to be some way to get them to whichever means of delivery you are using. So any pipeline, say if you're using a GitHub runner to sync that content to an S3 bucket or to a file share, wherever you're distributing these files from, Concourse can handle that. In this example, you can see we take a task runner image, just a generic image to run tasks on in Concourse, Python-based image to run some code, monkey repo, pull it in. This pipeline is called a monkey S3 sync, so we can see it's syncing the content to an S3 bucket. And on the other end, we have a Slack alert to tell us how it goes. Another example might be generating manifests for your monkey repository. So if you are basing this off of team names from your IDP or serial numbers from your MDM, you could use it to generate those for you. If you are using Autopromote, one of the scripts included in the work the folks at Gusto did, you could use it to use Concourse to run that as well. So any job that you have running in GitHub Actions, Jenkins, CircleCI, any of the other tools out there, could be migrated to Concourse with a bit of practice. There is a bit of a learning curve, but I think that comes with any new software. And YAML is always going to be YAML. It's a markup language, and I don't know that there's any good ones, but it's an easy enough and enjoyable enough place to configure your pipelines that we have chose to stick with it, and I have fully enjoyed what has come from it. And with that, I thank you for your time.